A lot of people, when they talk about things, they frame it like a TED talk or something where it's like, I knew at the time. I realized I was internalizing these ideas, but I couldn't have told you at the time this is what it is. But too much money and too much time wrecks creativity. I skipped rehab in his 20s and decided to go to conflict resolution workshops in Santa Fe, which I both recommend and I do not recommend unless you love turquoise jewelry.
Hi friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. Stephanie Jones is going to put pressure on Blake Lively to settle. I guarantee it. Allegedly. Maybe? I don't know. But something just happened. I went through and recorded this entire video where I was going to talk to you all about Tay and Blake and why Tay doesn't want to do a deposition. And I was going to tell you all about how, Tay is about to get a subpoena. And I was going to go over all of these things about why isn't Tay going to defend her friend. And then while I was in the process of getting ready to put together the video, I noticed my hard drive was super full and I ended up deleting all of the audio that I had for that video. And so here I am to actually bring you a more important story because it has to do with Stephanie Jones's attorneys sitting down with Billy Bush for ExtraTV. I'm not going to show you what they said because it's ridiculous, but I'll paraphrase and tell you in quotes the answers to their questions. But I think it was really weird the way that they framed some of their responses because, well, let's just go there. So Billy Bush sat down with Marin Shaw and Christian Thaler, who are the two attorneys that are representing Stephanie Jones. And Shaw told Billy Bush, they said they want to take her clients. They said there's a kill story about Steph that was in Business Insider and that we believe they conspired to put out there. They said they were going to be rich and happy and make lots of money together. And they also said they were being abused by Stephanie. It's really ironic that her attorneys don't even consider the fact that Stephanie was probably a very hostile boss, very inappropriate. I mean, I'm shocked that Stephanie hasn't been sued by her former employees for like workplace discrimination in a hostile work environment and employer retaliation. But that's just me. Again, so they're cherry picking it. And then Billy asked them, the issue, I guess, the biggest one for me is the text messages that appeared in the New York Times on December 22nd. Baldoni and his team have cried collusion. You guys say those texts were not leaked, that you were subpoenaed by Blake, yes? And Shaw said, that's right, Billy. Our client, Stephanie Jones, has found herself in the middle of a lot of speculation recently. Stephanie has been in the industry for a long time, and she had to file the lawsuit that we are here to talk about to protect that business, to protect her clients, and to protect the reputation she spent years building. It's interesting. They would say that they're there to protect the clients of Stephanie Jones because Stephanie Jones didn't protect her clients. And Stephanie Jones was out running around and sharing private messages, confidential information with third parties that had nothing to do with her. She had no reason to give that information to anyone. She has been fired by so many people. And for them to try to pin this so-called hit piece on Business Insider is such deflection. Why did all of her clients drop her? Why did Blake? Why did Dwayne The Rock Johnson? Why did Chris Helmsworth? Why did Jeff Bezos? Why did Lauren Sanchez? Why did all of these corporations drop her? Why are more than 40 people spoken to by Business Insider, and yet it's, Jen Abel that took the hit piece? Maybe the women wanted a way out of their toxic work environment. Anyway, they continued that. Billy asked about Jen Abel, who left and became a member of Baldoni's crisis PR team. And she said she's here because there are real contractual breaches. There was a contractual breach by her former employee, Jen Abel, but there was also a contractual breach by Wayfair and by Justin Baldoni. They had a contract with Jonesworks. They breached that contract. And he said, does Wayfair owe money to Jonesworks? And Taylor responded, absolutely. And she said it was at least a couple $100,000 that was owed to Stephanie Jones. She wants $250,000, apparently. even though Stephanie was the one that was acting ridiculous. And she then, in retaliation for them firing her, she gave all of their information to Blake Lively. Billy Bush literally went straight to the jugular. And one of his questions was this, listen to this. Stephanie's just responding to a subpoena. The question is, did she know the subpoena was coming from Blake Lively's shell company, right? It was coming from Van Zandt Inc. Did she know that it was coming from a shell company? And instead of answering whether or not Stephanie knew if the subpoena was coming from a shell company, and I love that he called it a shell company because you know what a shell company implies? That it's a company that's shielding and used as a shell for criminal activity or to hide assets or to launder money. Shell companies are used in white collar crime for tax fraud, money laundering, racketeering, extortion. The list goes on and on. A company that has no business attached to it, right? And instead of answering the question, which they didn't, they said, let's just say the process that was used was fully appropriate to use. The Doe lawsuit is a common lawsuit. That's not an answer. That's what Kristen Taylor said. That is not an answer. The question here is, did she know that the subpoena was coming from Van Zandt Inc. and it was a shell company being used to conceal Blake's identity? And all they said was, let's just say it was fully appropriate to use. That doesn't answer the question. It's a non answer. And when someone has a non answer, it means they have no answer for the question. And instead, they want to deflect the question to get you to look at something else. And so they're going to say it's normal, it's common. Because if they actually admit that what they did is what they did, they have civil liability here. And these attorneys are speaking like this because if they admit that Stephanie knew that she used a shell company, they can all end up with ethical violations. They can get disbarred. They can literally get sanctioned for this. And these women are more interested in defending Stephanie and getting on another tabloid video to defend Stephanie again, and again. But you know what's funny, ladies, is you wouldn't be in this place if Stephanie or one of her friends didn't leak the subpoena to the public and we didn't figure out what was going on. And now they're in here trying to pretend like what we saw we didn't see. Billy asked them if it was legal to do this. And she said, it's absolutely not an end around. It's a common practice that if somebody is defamed, if someone is smeared, and if something happens and they don't know who did it, they can file a lawsuit. Citing an example of defaming website, Taylor said, you want to find the person who has the website out there. You file a Doe lawsuit where there is a plaintiff against Doe's to find that out. And Bush said, what do you expect to happen here? And she said, as I said, we're moving forward with our legal claims. Those are very strong, very well founded, and we're going to move them to trial. Asked whether or not if Brian Friedman came to them and wanted to settle, this is the entire reason these ladies went on camera. I promise you, this is the reason why these ladies are on camera. They said, never say never, but that's a question as we move forward that we're all going to have to grapple with. That's the only reason they're there. They're putting out into the universe that they want to settle. Because on one breath, they say, we're going to move forward to trial. We have solid claims. And he says, well, what if he wants to settle? And she's like, we'll never say never. We're going to have to grapple with that. Meaning they want to settle. That's my opinion. And why do they want to settle? Because the more information that comes out about this subpoena, in my opinion, the worse it's going to look. And quite honestly, why are they getting so defensive? If Stephanie was merely a woman that was simply being subpoenaed, right? If she was simply just someone on the receiving end of a subpoena, why would she have any liability or fault? Why would they need to justify the actual lawsuit if it was a legitimate lawsuit? Why would they need to sit on ExtraTV and say to people, no, it's not an end around. This is totally normal. And not answer the question about the shell company and not answer, did she know it was about Van Zandt Inc.? And when they give the non-answer, if I would have been that journalist, I would have said, but did she know it was a shell company? Because that's going to be the issue that happens in court. And of course, they're not going to say publicly that she knew. And again, if she was simply a woman that was on the receiving end of a court-ordered subpoena, why would she even need to defend herself? She wouldn't. But in this case, if Stephanie Jones responded to a subpoena from a shell company that was not associated with Justin Baldoni or Jen Abel, that had nothing to do with either one of them, and she was a third party, and Blake's attorneys didn't receive judicial permission. They didn't seek permission from the court to issue the third party subpoena. They didn't get any sort of order from the court, even though they could have used the subpoena this way. If they wanted to go through the proper channels, even in the state of New York that has pretty lax laws, in order to cross all their T's and dot all their I's, they would have gone through a judge and had a judge sign the subpoena. But there was no judge assigned to the case. And if Stephanie willfully handed over a bunch of documents to Blake Lively within days of Blake Lively filing this lawsuit, and she didn't notify her employee that was being targeted and her former clients, they're on this interview right now because she said they need to protect Stephanie Jones and the company that she's built. Well, what I'm expecting and suspecting is that behind the scenes, people are hearing this and they're wondering, well, if I don't do something that Stephanie wants, or if we have a falling out, is Stephanie going to turn over all of our communications to my arch nemesis who's going to then weaponize it against me in the press? Is Stephanie going to retaliate against me by giving my secrets to someone else so they can destroy me? Because that's what it looks like Stephanie did. Because Stephanie didn't notify Jen. Stephanie didn't give Wayfair an opportunity, nor did Blake Lively. And for them to try to defend that this is normal by then using a hypothetical example of, well, if you're in a defamation case and you don't know who it is that you're looking for, you can use these kinds of lawsuits. That's again more deflection. Blake knew exactly who she was looking for because on August 21st, Stephanie Jones told Leslie Sloan about those text messages. They knew who all of the people were involved. Blake knew she was after Justin Baldoni. Blake knew that something happened in Justin. Justin was the person she was going to blame. And Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel. She had her targets. She knew exactly who she was going to sue. She didn't need to do this undercover, figure out who's running a website. There was no website being run. There was no Stephanie Jones lies in this case. There was nothing like that at all. There was actual people that were victims of domestic violence that spoke up and spoke out. And these women that are claiming to defend a woman, Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively, are doing a disservice to all the victims of domestic violence that are real people that disagreed with Blake. They are a disgrace to women, all of them that are doing this. And something else I just want to drop here is that Blake Lively's not only getting pressure from here, Stephanie Jones, trying to get out of this, realizing, oh, maybe I shouldn't have leaked the subpoena to the tabloids. Oh, crap. Now I need to defend myself and say this was normal. Stephanie, you were just on the receiving end, right? Nudge, nudge. You were only responding to a subpoena. Nudge, nudge. That's not what the attorneys here are saying. But again, back to my story. Taylor also put out a statement yesterday and her, through a source to Entertainment Tonight, said that she does not want to be involved at all in Blake Lively's legal matter with Justin. She just wants to focus on herself, spend time with her boyfriend, and enjoy some time off. She doesn't want to be dragged into the case because a couple days ago, there was an article that said Taylor Swift is about to get subpoenaed for a deposition, and depositions are supposed to be done by August 14th. And they have about, I don't know, 3 dozen people that they need to depose. And that's a lot. That's a lot of depositions you got to get scheduled in a short window of time. So Taylor is sending a message to Blake like, you need to settle and get out of this because I'm not going to help you. And why isn't she going to help Blake? What if Taylor knows that maybe Blake wanted to cheat on Ryan? Maybe that's why Taylor doesn't want to do it. Maybe she had conversations with Blake that were all about how Blake caught feelings for Justin. Maybe Blake came up with the sexual harassment claims after Justin rebuffed her because that's the alleged story that's circulating on the internet right now. And apparently, allegedly, people that know Blake, like Brittany Mahomes was allegedly telling some of her friends this on a girls' trip this weekend, allegedly, that it wasn't about sexual harassment, that Blake tried to cheat on Ryan and that Justin rejected her. And now Blake's pretending like she was sexually harassed. I mean, if that's true, wouldn't that explain why Taylor doesn't want to help? Wouldn't it explain that Taylor doesn't want to help because she knows Blake maybe had tried to have an affair? Do we need to remind everyone about the teeth? You know, I'm a ball buster, but never with teeth. It's flirty and it's yummy. You'll have to see it. I can try it for you in person. I want to show you this cap. It's going to be more sexy when you see her walking down the street. That's the kind of girl that I would see and I would be turning my head at. Ball busting is my love language. Remember all those flirty texts with Justin not reciprocating? You know, they always say there's nothing like a woman scorned and a husband that's jealous of a lover. I'm still going to ride or die on the fact that I think a lot of this came out of the fact that Blake believes the sexuality, tried to use her sexuality to get an affair going with Justin. That didn't work. So then it flipped on him to get control by claiming sexual harassment. And I'm gonna I'll take that to my grave as my gut feeling. And that Justin, she got her husband all riled up, believing that she was sexually harassed to save her marriage so that he wouldn't leave her because she got caught trying to cheat on him again. Because she cheated on Penn Badgley to get with Ryan. She was a mistress apparently for Ben Affleck when he was married to Jen Gardner. Jen Gardner. She has been linked to other co-stars that she's done movies with while still being married to Ryan. And Ryan knows how he met her. They were unfaithful to their significant others. So it's not too far-fetched to think that, maybe Blake was trying to get a little piece while she was away from her husband, use that to get more control on the film. And then when that didn't work and to save face, here we are. Because Tay says, I don't want to be a part of it. Stephanie Jones's attorneys are on there saying, there's nothing to see here, but we might settle. But we need to save the clients. Why do you need to save the clients? And why is your client in the middle of speculation? Your client started it by running to the press, Stephanie Jones's attorneys. And so Stephanie wants to settle, pressure. Taylor says, I don't want a part of it, pressure. And then suddenly I'm getting emails from people that were on girls' trips or whose friends were on girls' trips with Brittany Mahomes. And Brittany Holmes is allegedly telling her friends on this girl trip that Blake tried to wanted to have an affair with Justin. Justin shut her down, and that's how this all happened. And that's why no one is supporting her. That's why. That's why, allegedly. I mean, I can't say for sure. I wasn't with Brittany. I can't say for sure, but it sounds plausible. Why would two things happen at the same time? Why would the affair rumors start again the same day that Taylor wants out? Seems a little strategic, doesn't it? It's a signal to Blake that her friends are not going to have her back because they know exactly who she is. So, what are your thoughts about this? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.